go through a little bit of a presentation here, and I'm also going to leave time at the end for any questions or comments. So I think rather than interrupt the flow of the evening, what we'll do is, if you have questions or concerns, just to jot them down or put them in the questions box on your control panel there, and we'll be sure to take some time towards the end of the presentation to address those. Certainly want to hear from you all. As a matter of fact, I will keep the questions box open. How's that? Just for any real burning questions or omissions that you might notice. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm assuming that most of you on this call now are familiar with Dowsing. We decided to change the name of the program to Mind Field Repatterning to give Dowsing a little higher degree of sophistication. As for many people still in their minds, when you mention Dowsing, they assume it's all about looking for, water in the field or lost objects and checking to see if the baby's a boy or a girl and this kind of stuff, which is fine. I mean, that is a legitimate approach to Dowsing, but both Irina and I have discovered that there's so much more, and that Dowsing is simply a means to access a very deep level of mind that is truly unlimited. But anyway, let's go ahead. We'll run through the program here, and again, look forward to hearing from you towards the end of the show. Okay, so I see that each time I change the screen, I lose the, oh, there it is. Okay. So we're going to talk about what is mind field repatterning, get a bit of an idea of a definition, if possible, for this work, for this practice, and then we're also going to look at the purpose of it. There are many, many great modalities out there, and the ones that work, I believe, is because of the purpose that we give them. So in other words, our intention, what we hope to achieve with any particular approach, is the value of that is determined by the purpose we give it. And so it's very important, I think, to have a clear sense of what is the purpose, why are we doing this, and what are the desired outcomes. Then we'll look more at, the actual mechanics, how and why does it actually work. And our experience has been, of course, that it does work, and it works very well. And we'll have some ideas around what you can actually do with mind field repatterning, and also how you can learn more about this. So mind field repatterning is our name for simply a method that uses the power of the mind combined with intention through some form of physical feedback. So as I'm sure you know and appreciate, we are physical beings. We are also non-physical beings. We're mental, and we're emotional, and we're energetic, and all of those things. So we really want to address the full, how can I say, the full multi-dimensional nature of ourselves with whatever practice we're doing, and conveniently using a tool like a pendulum. Let's see, the webcam is gone again. Let me see. Oh, there it is. Okay. We use a pendulum as a physical indicator or feedback to subtle changes in the musculature, and we also use it as a means to empower our intention. And so bringing the physical into this work, I think, is a very important aspect of it. We had developed this particular method over many years of study and application. Actually, when Irina and I both met about 10 years ago now, we were both already dowsing and integrating dowsing into our personal lives as well as our professional practices. So we quickly recognized that commonality and have been building and developing it over all of this time. And it continues to be, again, an open-ended field about as limited as our imagination. So we wanted, however, to distill, again, the challenge is to take such a broad reaching approach and to distill it down into an organized approach that anybody can learn. And that's, of course, always a challenge, is to bring it down to very concrete steps, etc. And that's what we've attempted to do with our classes. We've actually divided the Mind Field Repatterning program into two weekend-long programs. We have a level 1 over 2 days, and then a level 2 over 2 days. And we do find that, the time in between the two levels, gives people an opportunity to get grounded in the fundamentals, get really comfortable with the practice, and then in the second level really take it to the limit. So again, this is an organized approach, and again hinting here at the purpose to clear the mind of blocks, limits, and stuck patterns. And that's basically all we're doing, hence the name Mind Field Repatterning. Field, recognizing that the mind certainly is not limited to the brain or the physical location, but that it actually is part and parcel of a mind field that literally fills the universe. So again, back to the limitlessness of this. And that the limitations and the stuck patterns that we hold on to are really what are simply keeping us from that realization. And again, the beauty of the practice is that it works wonderfully as a standalone practice, but it can also be easily adapted and integrated into any other true healing modality as a means of gathering information, as a means of facilitating energetic shifts, and also, perhaps even determining a course of action from the time to the future. So the tools of this practice are very basic. Again, this is one thing that we appreciate about mind field repatterning, is that anybody can afford the technology. The main technology is the power of your own mind at its creative level. And we'll talk a little bit more in a moment what that means, what the creative level of the mind actually is. Again, coupled with the power of your sincere intention. So there's that purpose, again, that we give it. And basically, the purpose is to reduce suffering and save time. We'll probably talk about that just a little more, but realistically, any true healing practice, that is all we can accomplish, because the outcome of our healing work, no matter what form it takes, is already accomplished on our behalf. And if you look at the definition of the term healing, for us it simply means to become whole, to reclaim our wholeness. And it turns out that our suffering is simply because of our belief that we are not whole, that we are somehow incomplete and somehow deserve to suffer. So if the end result of our work is already accomplished outside of time, you might say, and that is simply the recovery of the knowledge of our perfection and our divine inheritance, then what do we do in the meantime until that's actually our experience? Well, we can reduce the suffering in the meantime by getting to the cause of it in the mind and correcting those causes, and thus save time. You see, when you heal an unconscious belief that is not serving you, that is not based in the truth of your being, and you find that on that deep level of the mind, and you release it or transform it, then all of the experiences that you may have had to live out that belief, to come face to face with the consequences of that belief, are now gone. It's like your life path might have been kind of like a wiggly line, but when you clear that unconscious pattern or belief at its root, the line straightens out. And our experience is, it saves time. We get home sooner. And so the tools are the power of your own mind, the power of your intention, and a set of organized protocols and materials. The pendulum itself, or whatever other tool you want to use, is really of little consequence. Again, it is simply a feedback mechanism, so that when your there's subtle changes in your musculature or in your nervous system due to this reaction of the mind on a deep level, it will come out in a pre-programmed movement that gives you a very tangible physical reaction that you can then refer to. And so we're going to talk more about that in a few moments. But suffice to say that it doesn't really matter, the quality of the tool you're using. There's no magic in the pendulum itself. Some more mystical types like to kind of give their power away to the tool, saying, and you even hear it in their language, well, the pendulum said this, or the pendulum indicated that. Well, the pendulum is not saying or indicating anything other than reflecting your own mind and giving you feedback on the physical level from that level of mind. So please don't fall into the mystical belief that the tool itself, that the power is in the tool. The power is in you, and so you don't want to give that away. That being said, we do prefer to use a pendulum. There are other dowsing tools out there and available, but the pendulum seems to be nice and compact. You can pop it in your pocket, take it wherever you go, and it seems to be pretty non-threatening to most folks who are not necessarily in this field. As a matter of fact, whenever I bring out a pendulum and someone happens to see it that's not familiar with it, I can sense right away a curiosity. Oh, what's that about? And so it's a great conversation starter as well. That being said, you do want to be discreet and not necessarily put people in fear who may have unconscious beliefs about accessing their own power through these methods and systems. So again, the tool itself, the main criteria for me when I choose a pendulum to use is really the weight. If it's too heavy and too dense, it seems to be sluggish in its responses and then slows down the whole process. If it's too light and bouncy, like some of the wooden ones I've worked with, for example, it may be overreactive and over-responsive. So you want to find a pendulum, if you're new to this, that's right for your physical makeup, right for your sense of feel, and so try out different ones, until you get sort of a weight that works for you, that's kind of in that Goldilocks zone of sensitivity and responsiveness. Again, many pendulums come with a really long, chain attached, and so you'll find people doing this, right, dangling it from the end, and that's fine. It just takes a lot more time again. So we prefer, to just gather up the chain and take about halfway along, and I'd say 3 or 4 inches is all you really need to get a response and to enter into the process. Again, by doing that, you save time, and thus you can get more accomplished in a given session. Excuse me. Okay, let's see if I can get that webcam back. There we go. Okay, learn the secret. So this is a little slide. I don't know if you can see that or not. Levels of the mind. This is a great illustration to help in the appreciation of the level of mind that we're actually working. If you think of your total mind as being somewhat like this iceberg, you could consider the thinking mind, the conscious mind, to be that small part on the top that's above the surface and is not aware, okay? So the line represents conscious awareness. It's not aware of that greater body underneath it that's actually supporting it. Its only focus is on that outer world. And as a matter of fact, that thinking mind, which is a smaller part of the mind, some say as little as 10% of your mind is actually involved in what we call consciousness. It looks out on that ocean and it sees other tips of other icebergs and automatically assumes that they're separate beings because they seem to be separated by space. And so it assumes it's all alone. And again, folks, this is really fundamental. Part of the problem is our belief that we are alone and that we are separated, that from Creator and from each other. That sense of separation really is at the root of most, if not all, of our suffering. And so it's very important to appreciate, I think, that there's much more going on with our minds than just the thinking part, just the conscious part. There's this vast body of mind below the surface, below our conscious awareness, that is actually operating all the time, whether we are conscious of it or not. On a physical level, the mind below the surface right now is breathing your body, it's beating your heart, it's digesting the last meal you had, it's regulating all the trillions of biochemical events that occur in your body, and it's responding to stress. It's doing all kinds of things on your behalf of which we are not even aware. And that's only on the physical realm. But a more, I think, impactful aspect of this body under the surface is that it floats in the same water as all other seemingly separated icebergs or beings. So in other words, it shares a common medium, okay? So it's on this deeper level of mind that we actually have access not only to the intelligence within our own form, but all intelligence as it is experienced by all beings. So this brings us to, I suppose, what we could call a quantum appreciation of this level of mind. This deep level of mind, which we like to call the superconscious, You know, in the old days, they'd call it the unconscious or the subconscious, because I don't think they really appreciated what was going on here. I like to give ours a little credit and assume that this level of mind is basically good. And so this superconscious mind has access to all the energy, information, and memories of all beings in this quantum field. Now, the thing about quantum fields is that they are not limited to the same laws and rules as physicality, as the mind above the surface. Quantum, what it implies is that that level of mind is not bound by time or space. In other words, it operates outside of the boundaries of time and space. This is why, with this practice, we can access information from any time and anywhere. And we can also affect change in any time and anywhere, you see, because on that level of the mind, we are all connected. I guess the problem in the past has been that there's been little, if any, communication between these two levels of mind. Dreams are one. Freud actually called dreams the royal road to the unconscious, because unconscious information can break through in dreams, but then you have to go through the process of interpreting it and trying to figure it all out. What we've discovered is that the pendulum, and that is the physical response behind the movement of a pendulum, provides a bridge between these levels of mind. So, for example, when I ask a question of something I don't know, okay, something I need either a yes or a no, I ask the question obviously from the level of my conscious mind, but I ask it of my superconscious. And if my superconscious doesn't have that direct information, it knows where to go, because it just goes out in that ocean and finds that information and brings it back to me at the speed of thought. And it replies to me through a specific pre-programmed movement of the body. Okay? So a little bit of physiology here. When the conscious mind has an intention, like, for example, I consciously realize I'm thirsty, my intention is to pick up this water and drink it, the information is delivered to my muscles through my central nervous system. So when I decide to walk away, when I decide to do this or that, it's all regulated through the central nervous system. When the superconscious, however, wants to express through the body, it does through the unconscious, or the what we would call the autonomic nervous system, giving automatic responses to my questions through the autonomic nervous system, through subtle changes in my musculature, through subtle changes in my feeling sense, for that matter. Now, so I have pre-programmed my nervous system and my mind to accept a vertical movement, again, of the pendulum being driven by the micro muscles of my body through the autonomic nervous system. I've accepted through my programming and my understanding that when a yes answer is ready to come through, it will come through this movement. Likewise, I've accepted through my own programming and attention that a no response will come back through a horizontal, I should say, movement of the pendulum. So for me, the challenge is how to frame questions so that I can get clear yes and no responses from my superconscious through this medium. What I've just described here, the physiological pathways of the conscious mind through the central nervous system and the superconscious mind through the autonomic nervous system, is the same groundwork for muscle testing. Okay? Same thing with muscle testing. There are subtle changes in the musculature in response to yes and no responses to questions asked. I guess I'm a little biased, however, when it comes to dowsing, because for one thing, you can see the results. They're tangible. Okay? It's a physical movement that not only I, but anybody else can see. And also, I'm not muscle testing necessarily for another person. It's a completely internalized process, which I trust more than me working with another person or another person working with me through my muscles. I'm well aware that fatigue of the muscles, for example, can affect how I respond when I'm being muscle tested. And also there's the ego, that is the conscious mind of both the tester and the testee, that can override the reactions as well. So it gets a little, how can I say, it just gets a little fuzzy. Whereas I feel with the dowsing, it's more of a direct personal communication between my conscious mind and my superconscious mind, and I trust it. So we'll talk a little bit more about this, but this is a great model to keep in mind when you're explaining to folks, how it is that we can know things sometimes intuitively. We can pick up information that does break through from the superconscious mind about other times, about other situations, about things that are happening at a distance. And again, this model helps to explain and perhaps understand these things a little better. So we talked a little earlier about purpose and how the effectiveness of any system that we use really is determined by the purpose we give it. So stepping back a little bit here, the premise to this work is that we as spirit, as our true nature, are already healed, whole, pure, innocent, and invulnerable. In other words, the finish line that all of our healing work aims at has already been accomplished, okay? Outside of time, outside of this world of time, space, and bodies, but it is accomplished. Otherwise, we wouldn't desire it. We wouldn't want peace. We wouldn't want innocence, invulnerability, immortality. We wouldn't want these things if we weren't already on some level familiar with them. So it's our inner memory, you might say the spark of memory of our own divine nature, that is already accomplished, that pulls us forward in our experiences to become consciously aware of these things, to wake up. That's what a waking up is waking up to what is. And this is, again, the accomplishment that you are. So the question, of course, why aren't I experiencing that all the time? If it's already given, what's the deal? Well, we have allowed, through our choice, through our own free will, on this planet, an illusion of separation to cloud our minds. Okay? And again, this goes back to the metaphysical view of non-dual thought systems, such as the Vedanta, such as the Tao, such as A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles is the foundation of our work, mind-field repatterning, and the other things that we do, because it offers a uniquely non-dual perspective on what is real. So that's a whole other topic, which I will get into, I suppose, at another time. But we have allowed ourselves to fall into a state of unreality. And this is the illusion of separation that we chose at a certain point. Well, I'll give you the thumbnail sketch here. Before the universe was created, and most cosmologists and astronomers agree today that the universe, if anything, is an expression of an idea. There's some kind of intelligence going on here that you can't quite see through a telescope. But there's some kind of an idea that must have predated the Big Bang. Well, that idea was, according to these non-dual thought systems, the whim of an idea of what would it be like to experience separation. And because of who we truly are as divine beings, that whim was sufficient to actually create the Big Bang and a universe of apparently separate forms. So we have allowed this illusion of separation to cloud our minds, to cloud our memories, to overtake our awareness, you might say, and the result of this, in the long run, is fear, pain, and guilt. Okay? You could say that these are the gifts of the ego, and the ego is simply the part of us that has bought into the illusion of separation. It's the made-up self that we created as a way to explain to ourselves who we are and how we got here. So we created this image we call the ego, and the ego, of course, being unaware of this divinity is, how can I say, tends towards fear, pain, and guilt. So mind-field repatterning, we have found, again, this is not just theory anymore, through our experience is an efficient way to clear the debris in our minds and magically making room for miracles. Now, by miracle, I simply mean the memory or the realization of our union, the recovery of that sense of unity, first with each other, and then ultimately with Creator or the Divine. So as we clear away the fog and the layers, one of our clients actually called it a delayering process. As we clear away the layers of this, the residue of the belief in separation, what happens is we just reveal the truth and the light that is already there. We don't have to go get it somewhere or aspire to it. Again, it's already there, and it's simply a matter of removing the veils, you might say, of illusion. And these veils are in the mind. So why not go to the mind to discover them and release them? So how does this all work? Okay. So as we were just alluding to, the cause of all that is within our minds. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this idea. What we really want to do is ground this idea, however, and really own it. Like, make it visceral. Understand that really it is all within our minds. When you're standing outside and you're looking at a tree, for example, where is that tree? Well, our automatic response is it's over there. It's an object that's separate from me. But a perceptual psychologist will tell you, well, no, that tree is actually in your mind. It's a perception of a tree in your mind, which you have automatically labeled tree because of past experience. So if our minds were different, if our sensory apparatus, if our eyes were different, we would not see the same tree. An insect does not see the tree that you do. They have a different reality because of simply their perceptual apparatus. So everything we perceive is really through the filters of our own minds and is an occurrence within our minds. Okay? And the corollary of this is if you change your mind about something, your experience of that thing will change. For example, if you believe that that tree is poisonous, you'll have an aversion to it, and you'll walk around it, and you will avoid it, and you will react in fear. But then someone corrects you and says, oh no, that just looks like a poisonous tree. It's actually a very good tree, and the fruit of that tree is wonderful. Well, that changes your whole experience because you've changed your mind. So the body, the world, and others are our projections. Think of as the conscious part of the mind as a movie screen. Okay, that top of the iceberg, think of it as a movie screen. And from the lower part of the mind, or the superconscious, ideas, concepts come up, which we then project onto our mind as the images we experience in the world. In other words, the world is like a movie, and you are the projector. So the question is, if something's going on in your movie that is not to your liking, or that stresses you, where do you go to change the picture? You know, do you go up into the screen and scrub away and try and move things around? Or do you sit back and realize, wait a minute, I'm making all of this up, and I just need to go back to the cause, the projector, change that, and then watch the change emerge on the screen. So in other words, change your mind, you change your life, and you change the world. In the Course in Miracles, it actually makes this very clear by saying, we do not try to change the world. However, we do try to change our mind about the world, and lo and behold, when we do so, the world changes. So again, it's getting back to that level of cause. If we're not dealing with the cause of an issue or a situation, then what are we dealing with? Well, you're dealing with an effect. And isn't that the whole thing behind Western medicine? Is fix the effect, fix the symptom, make the symptom go away, and you're well again. Well, not if the cause isn't addressed. The symptom just pops up somewhere else. So we need to go to the level, the deepest level of cause that we can comprehend in the mind, find that original thought or the memory, and change it. And again, we'll show you exactly how that works. So when minds join together for the purpose of union and healing, miracles happen. Now, when we say miracles, again, A Course in Miracles has a different take on it. Miracles are usually associated with physical miracles, you know, like the automatic healing of a wound, that kind of thing, or circumstances in your life going your way. We call that a miracle. Well, the true miracle from a spiritual perspective is simply the remembrance of union, the breakdown of separation. And when the separation that is causing our suffering dissolves, and we see a greater level of unity with whoever or whatever it is we're experiencing, that is the miracle. And the other kinds of miracles, you know, physical miracles, can be the result or the effect of the true miracle, which happens on the level of the mind. So some of the things that you can do with mind field repatterning, again, as I said earlier, this is really one of the challenges because it is as limited as your imagination. But any issue or event occurring in any time, so we can go back to childhood. Again, remember that deeper level of the mind is in a conscious realm, so it's not limited by time and space. We can go to any issue at any time, address a condition or a situation because it all comes from the same place. It's all birthed in the mind. We then discover the root cause through specific lines of inquiry, simply asking questions. And then we make a new decision. We shift the energy, remove the block, or address the deficiency, whatever is called for. And as we remove that cause, whatever the problem was, whatever the situation was, well, that was just an effect. So the effect goes away when there's no cause. Again, all we're really doing here, and all any true healing practice can accomplish, is that we reduce the suffering and save time. The outcome is already given. And I think that's really helpful to remember because, it can get discouraging when we're caught in the mires of, suffering and patterns that we can't understand or access the root cause. Just remind yourself that it's all happening literally in a dream, and that the outcome, which is the awakening of the dreamer, is already given. So there are two basic phases here to the dowsing process. And the first phase is the yes and no classic dowsing. This is the kind that goes back, centuries, if not thousands of years ago. Very similar to muscle testing in its physiology and how we access different levels of the mind. And we find that this form of classic dowsing is an essential part of getting to the root of issues. Again, I mentioned a moment ago, specific lines of inquiry where you bore down the rabbit hole, as it were, till you get to that point in time, many times, where that original mistake was made or where we got off track or whatever. So we ask the right questions, we get that information. Now, classic dowsing not only involves yes and no, but you can also get information through reading specific charts, particularly number charts, where you can use classic dowsing for also measuring things like time, distance, percentage, probabilities, etc. We get into this in our Level 1 class, and it's also outlined in our book, Dowsing Beyond Duality. Once you get the information, however, once you've discovered, okay, all of this boils down to a childhood memory, a stuck emotion from age 5, for example, what do you do with that? Well, then we switch gears into what I like to call active dowsing, where we actually go in and we use the spin of the pendulum to change the memory, to change the belief, to clear up the misidentification at its root, like a dentist, right? You just drill down until you get to the very core of the issue. And then we, of course, through different processes, right, we fill the voids, etc. And it's quite amazing the physical changes that people can experience very often when we use this, this particular technique, because we're working with the mind on a level that it comprehends, okay? And what I mean by that is you will never be guided, especially if you've turned the whole process over to the divine, you'll never be guided to go anywhere that can create fear for the person you're dowsing for. Because, again, that would kibosh the whole process. Fear contracts, right? And so we rather than recognize and release the block, we create defenses around the block, and we choose to stay in suffering rather than release ourselves. So we definitely don't want to create fear. But again, what our experience has been that by turning this over to the divine and using the questions as outlined and getting to the root, what we're really getting to is the deepest level of cause in the mind that the person will allow without fear. And we'll maybe see some examples of that in a few moments. So what I'm going to suggest for those of you that are new to this practice, or perhaps are already dowsers, but want to get on board with this particular technique, is that we're going to do a little exercise together here and program our yes and no responses. Now, when I was first dowsing, I wasn't given much guidance at all. And for me, naturally, a yes response would come out in the form of a clockwise or a right spin movement. And that made perfect sense to me. And then a no response would come out as a counterclockwise or a left spin. And that worked for me for quite some time. As a biofeedback practitioner, I found it very reliable and convenient to have what I call the secondary validation process, where I could double check when things got a little fuzzy or there was questions that couldn't be answered through the technology necessarily. I would just take out my pendulum and I'd check with my own superconscious mind. And on many occasions, it led me to do things I ordinarily wouldn't have even considered. So, and in some cases, it was a crucial part of understanding what was really going on for the client. But as it went, as things were going, I was actually at the time, this was over 10 years ago, I was in conference with a fellow practitioner across the country, and we would connect once in a while, and she said, I asked her what's new with her, and she says, well, I'm now broadcasting homeopathics with my pendulum. I went, what? How's that possible? What are you talking about? But I was intrigued, and so she basically told me the script that she used to do this, and I was determined to check this out. So, not being much of a feeler myself, typical guy, I have to see things, although that is improving. I took the script and I read it out and did the dowsing, as indicated, for some friends that I knew could give me honest feedback. And sure enough, they were saying, "Oh yeah, I felt that," and "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool," and all that. So as it turned out, I was looking through the local paper where I lived at the time, and there was a small ad for this little dowsing class. So I immediately signed up, and then when I told my friend about this, she said, "Well, who's the class with?" And I said, "Well, Raymond Grace." And she said, "Well, that's who taught me." And that's when I realized that the universe was conspiring to get me into this practice. And anyway, it was a weekend that changed my life and still continues to influence our work. It's a big part of our work. As a matter of fact, the protocol that we use is largely derived from Raymond Grace's work, and he was kind enough actually to endorse our book as well. So anyway, at that class, he said, "Anybody here already dowsing?" Yep. Okay. So who's using vertical and horizontal? Well, not everybody. So he had us all in the class reprogram our nervous systems and our minds to the vertical and horizontal movement for yes and no. Reason being was to free up the spins for the active form of dowsing. We needed the spins to do another job. Therefore, we needed to program. So I'm going to suggest that unless you're already doing this, that you take your pendulum now, holding it again with a short cord here, a short chain, hold it out in front of you now, and actually produce a physical, make it move yourself, don't wait for anything to happen, you're in control, produce a strong vertical motion in front of yourself. And with your concentration on that movement, I want you to repeat with me out loud. Again, there's something about the out loud that brings the conscious mind into, includes the conscious mind in the process. And the conscious mind, frankly, has a hard time with this stuff because it's not rational. It's not in its frame of reference. So we want to bring it along, like that doubting friend. Come on along, check it out for yourself. So speaking it out loud is a great way to integrate conscious and the superconscious mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch the movement, and we're going to say out loud 9 times, because repetition is the law of memory. And when you repeat information, it goes from short-term into long-term memory and becomes a permanent part of your information system. So, enough explanation, let's just do it. Looking at your pendulum now, keeping the movement strong, repeat with me. This is my yes. 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 And this is my yes. Okay, good. Now, in a similar way, again, keeping concentration on the movement, create a horizontal motion in front of yourself, and together we will repeat, this is my no. 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 And this is my no. Okay. So bring it now to stillness. This time you're not going to consciously create a motion. You're simply going to watch and wait and in a relaxed state. Now by that I mean don't let the conscious mind's worries come in and Don't worry about, am I going to get this right, or am I learning correctly? Or, that's just the conscious mind kind of wondering what's going on. But take a breath, be relaxed, and be okay with whatever does or doesn't happen. Again, no attachment to outcome. But command now, out loud, show me yes. Show me yes. In a manner that I can perceive, show me yes. And then relax. Allow it to happen. Allow the superconscious access to the new pathways you've just created to recreate the movement indicating yes. Okay? Now, when we're in a live class, I notice that there's various degrees of success with this. Some people get the movement just happening right away. Others, it's kind of tentative and takes a little bit, but ultimately it shows up. And rarely, well, maybe 10%, get nothing at all. If that's you, then, of course, write it down, and we'll address the reasons why that may be at the end of the program, okay? But for now, I'm going to assume that the majority of you are getting a yes. Again, show me no, and work with whatever degree of movement you're getting. Again, this is a new, for some of you, this may be a new neural pathway, and so it may need a little bit of practice to get up and running and become clear and flow easily, and that's okay. Be gentle with yourself. Adults are so, how can I say, self-judging when it comes to learning new things. Remember, as a kid, you knew you didn't know, and so you let yourself off the hook. But as an adult, oh, I need to do this right, and I'm so good at other things. Why aren't I good at this? Let yourself off the hook. Just play. Be that kid again. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, hey, it's not the end of the world. Okay? But for those of you that are getting a reliable yes and a reliable no, okay, which I'm assuming is most of you, begin to practice. Build on what you've already created here with simple things, okay? Don't ask big life questions like, is so-and-so my soulmate, or am I in the right career? Wait on that stuff. That's the big life-changing stuff. Work and build your confidence. See, one of the main roadblocks that we've noticed with students in this area is they get to a certain point and then they hit a confidence gap, or they hit a place where they think, oh, I'm getting the answers I wanted, therefore I can't trust myself, right? We need to start with simple things, and in a way, we're conditioning our conscious mind to accept what is happening from that superconscious level. It's a new language. It's trying to get comfortable with it. So work with simple things. Foods, for example. If you have a bowl of oatmeal in front of you in the morning, take out your pendulum. Does my body want this? Is my body allergic to this food? Does this body strengthen me? No, just basic things, okay? Or I should say, does the cereal strengthen me? Supplements, this is what I did because I'm a bit of a supplement junkie still. But when I first learned yes and no, I took all the supplements I thought I needed and I put them out on the table and I dowsed over each one. Does my body really need this one? Is this one really benefiting me? And I basically carved the pile into two equal piles of yes and no. Now, my body was actually thanking me, because if a supplement isn't helping you, it's stressing you, because supplements are very highly concentrated nutrients, and it's a hard job for the liver to process these things. So the next day, however, just to build my own confidence, I put them all back together, shuffled them up, and did the same thing. Is this one really good for me? Does my body really want this one, etc.? And I ended up with the same two piles. That's sort of basically when I became a believer. But working with the simple things. Bring your pendulum with you to the supermarket, for example. So there's 3 brands of vitamin C. So you can just take your pendulum over. Is this the best vitamin C in the store for me? No. Is number 2 the best vitamin C for me? And you can get specific as well. For example, you're dealing with, difficulty sleeping. So is this herb the best herb to help me regulate my sleep? Is this herb the best herb to help me regulate my sleep, etc.? Now, you can do that also off of lists. You can do it off of menus. When you're in the restaurant, there's 12 items on the menu. So you point to number 1. Is this the best choice for me? Is this the best choice? Is this the, oh, okay, number 3. Well, that's something I wanted anyway, but now I know my superconscious mind is in agreement. Also keep your statements clear and accurate. One thing about the superconscious mind is that it does respect you, and it takes you literally at your word. Okay? So it doesn't try and interpret the nuances of what you really need to say. It just takes what you say. For example, if you were to ask, does my car need gas, you will always get yes, because your car always needs gas. But maybe yesterday, the person that borrowed it filled it up, and you don't need gas today. So does my car need gas today? You'll get a different answer, you see. So if your answers are vague, likely your questions are vague as well, or a little too open-ended. So try and define your questions a little bit more accurately to what you really are asking, and you may find that your answers come more clearly as well. Now, once in a while, because we are in a multidimensional universe, once in a while you'll be going along and the responses make sense, they seem supportive, and then all of a sudden everything just goes out the window. At that time, I will ask, and this happens, I will ask, is there interference going on? Okay? Is there some kind of interference happening? Yes. And do I have permission? Can I, may I, should I douse out the interference? Okay? So, and then we'll use the left spin to release the interference, which we'll talk about the spins in a moment. But this is what you can do as you're going along and you hit a snag, or you lose your confidence or whatever. You can use the spins to get yourself back on track as well. But like any new skill, learning to play the piano, the key to success is regular practice. Okay? So, put aside 10 or 15 minutes in the evening or whenever, coffee break or whatever, to practice your skills. They will improve, they will get better, your confidence will rise, and you'll be so glad you did. Because really, folks, there is no need to guess about anything in this life. You have a library card to your superconscious mind, which is connected to all fields of information. Deepak Chopra called it the cosmic computer. There is no need, there's no reason for you not to have the information you need to know to make good decisions. So that is our goal, and that's the process. So we're now going to talk about the spins. Okay? Again, we're covering a lot of territory on this intro. We used to, this is the first intro we've done like this on a webinar. Mostly our intros have been done in small groups and evening sessions and that kind of thing. But we just thought, well, why not, spread it out to folks that can't get here for an evening. And so we'll actually get the group, everybody up and spinning and stuff like that, or doing their yeses and nos. And then we'll talk about the spins. So the spins, again, just to review, are what we use now in the active phase of dowsing. Once we've got the information, once we've accessed the point of causation in the mind, then we can decide to change that energy with a spin. Now, there's much more going on. I used to think that the spin was really just for, as a distraction, or as something, as something that we create in order to give the conscious mind a visual point of reference. And it does serve that purpose, I believe. But there's much more going on here with the spin. Spins themselves are a basic dynamic of creation. Okay? We see spins all around us, from the spinning of galaxies to the spinning of subatomic particles, and pretty well everything in between. Movement is life, and movement occurs in cycles. Okay? So the whole thing is spinning. No wonder we're dizzy half the time. Okay? But what happens with a spin, because again it is a dynamic of creation, it actually creates a mini vortex, even something like this. There's a tiny little vortex created in space here. And a vortex by nature implies a still point, a place somewhere in space where the movement that provides the hub, you might say, the center point for the movement. Even something as simple as a spinning pendulum. Now, a still point in the middle of a vortex, okay, creates what we call a scalar opening. A scalar opening is a how can I say, it's a multi-dimensional portal that is created at the intersection of similar but opposing energy fields. Okay, that's the definition of the scalar opening. The still point in the middle of a vortex is producing a very similar effect in a point in space. You could say it's like a miniature black hole, right? And which, of course, goes down, the information goes down into that miniature black hole and pops up somewhere else in the universe. Well, this is pretty wild stuff, but it is backed by what we now understand of quantum physics. So a still point at the center, well, here's a good example. When a tornado passes over the land, very often they'll find in the wake of that tornado impossible combinations of matter. For example, a feather embedded in a brick, or a nail in a tomato plant or something. Well, I guess that's not too hard to imagine, but you know what I'm saying. They'll find, a chicken bone coming out of a rock, for example. And the only explanation for these impossible combinations is that at some point in the center of that vortex, the energy of that still point literally entangled, that's not the right word, literally dissolved those objects, but instantly put them back together again, in this case, in a combined form. So in other words, there was an instantaneous return to the basic constituent of matter, which is light, back into the form of matter in the center of the vortex. So this is a good illustration of what we're talking about. When we create a vortex, we're actually creating a transformational point in space where, again, we can drop our intention in the form of the spoken word into that vortex, into that still point, and create a manifestation anywhere in time and space. That's pretty wild stuff, isn't it? Well, all we're doing is we are consciously playing the co-creation game. If creation is all about spins, then why not use one intentionally? I mean, the other choice is just to be a victim of all the spins that are going on around us. But we can actually step in and say, you know what? I'm going to play the co-creator game. I'm going to practice now working with spins. So saving time and reducing suffering, again, is the point behind all of this. We don't want to lose track of that. But the spins are a wonderful way to step into our power and to be able to actually focus our intention and see the outcome in many cases. That's the philosophy, at least, behind the spins. So there is, again, a general process that we go through when we're working with folks with this modality. First of all, we want to get clear, what's the issue at hand, what would they like to work with, and then we use the classic dowsing and specific lines of inquiry, as I mentioned earlier, asking questions to get down to the deepest cause in the mind, using, again, yes and no dowsing. We also have charts where we can check time frames and probabilities as well to help clarify where we're going. And now we call that process investigating special issues. When someone has a specific issue, we use that process. We also have a 55-point protocol, the one that we got from Raymond Grace I told you about earlier, that actually covers many of the commonalities that many people experience, and so is also a great reference point for checking different things that could be going on for people. And we also have well over 70 charts now, probably more because we keep making them. But a chart is another visual learning apparatus whereby you can chart a set of choices in a pie graph, and let's say, for example, flavors of ice cream. You can put all the flavors of ice cream, and then you can douse what would be the most enjoyable ice cream for me to consider, that kind of thing. So charts are another way of expanding the scope of what can actually be doused, what information can you get. And then once we've got the information, we either spin out the block or spin in new energies or a combination of both. There are other things we can do. Remember I told you about my friend who broadcast homeopathics, okay, with their pendulum, okay? So we can also broadcast remedies simply by holding them in our mind. We can also broadcast rates, which are numbers. This is one of the things I like to do, is we create a number. We actually dowse through classic dowsing to discover a number that acts as a vibrational energy pattern to either break up a stress pattern or bring something new in. And the rates are a great way, I think, of addressing issues that you don't know how else to deal with them. It's a great fallback system. So again, in our live classes, we go more into how that works, and we might get an example of that this evening. So what I'd like to do now that you're up and running with your yes and no, and is to actually go through just a small example of group clearing, again, with all of your permission. Now, a few moments ago, I asked permission by saying, can I, may I, should I? And that's kind of a blanket way of getting permission to work with someone. And I think permission is a very important thing, especially if they're in person, okay? It's sitting in front of you or over the phone. Again, you're dealing with a superconscious, but you're also dealing with a conscious mind. And so permission for most people is a conscious acquiescence or a conscious agreement, to allow whatever is to happen. And it's important to get that level of cooperation. However, in some situations where you're not face-to-face with that person or in conversation, you can also you can sort of bypass the conscious mind, and you can simply ask of the superconscious, do I have permission? Can I, may I, should I work for this person? The superconscious, which is another way of saying the higher self, I suppose, will never say no. Because the superconscious is all about healing. It's all about waking up. The conscious mind is the one that's going to, go into fear. So, often that's what we do. We simply ask of the higher self, of the individual, do we have permission to deal with this issue or whatever. When you say can I, you're actually saying, do I have the ability? When you're saying may I, do I have the permission of everyone involved and affected? Okay. And then should I, is this the best circumstance and time in order to do this work? So can I, may I, should I is a great way to get a quick validation. I'm going to check now and see can I, may I, should I dowse for this group this evening here. I'm getting a yes. Now, if for whatever reason this doesn't describe you, you can simply say I block these clearings. And again, you have that privilege. So one of the things that's in our protocol and that we like to do for groups as a demo is actually a spirit guide upgrade. Now, spirit guide upgrade implies that spirit guides aren't perfect. Okay, so that's kind of where we're coming from with this. Spirit guides in this frame of reference are the astral beings that accompany us through life and also between lives. Dr. Michael Newton wrote about our spirit guides as being kind of like a soul family that we reunite with between lives, and we compare notes and all kinds of stuff. But they're a lot like us. Okay, they're still enrolled in life and reincarnation and Earth school. Right, they're still going through stuff, and as a result of that, your guide team may not necessarily be 100% available for you because they're still dealing with their stuff. So, because our spirit guides are in the fourth dimension, however, which is a quantum dimension, on request, they can how can I say, fast forward their own soul evolution, you might say, or growth, and take on the qualities of a 100% pure light being. In other words, if we give them a little shove from here, a little request, they will become what we call spirit guides of 100% divine light and intention. And therefore, you will be the main beneficiary of this upgrade. Also, for them, it saves time. So can I, may I, should I dowse for a spirit guide upgrade? I'm going to look on my chart of 10 here and just see to what degree are our current spirit guides in this state of 100% light, about 60%. And that's just a group average. It's going to be more or less for individuals, but on an average here of all the people on this call tonight, we're getting about 60% of the support that we could get if our spirit guides were, how can I say, on it all the time. So what we're going to do is with a left spin, and if you are dowsing out there with me, certainly invite you to join along here. The more the merrier, the more powerful. Is with a left spin, we're going to ask to release from our current guide teams any and all aspects of our current spirit guides that are not resonating at 100% pure divine light and intention at their full potential. Releasing those aspects and accelerating our spirit guide team up to what we would call 100% divine, pure divine light, intention, and potential. Now, if any of our current guide teams, however, are not ready, willing, or able to receive this upgrade at this time, we ask with respect that they be retired and replaced with spirit guides of 100% pure light, potential, divine essence, and that this upgrade remain in place for our highest good and for the highest good of all from this time forward without any reversals. Okay? So when you do this upgrade for folks, it's a subtle thing, but what you may notice is that life gets just a little easier. The doors open, your intentions manifest a little more quickly, and should you notice that in the next few days, just give a little nod, give a little recognition that, oh, okay, seems like my guidance has really improved here. And like any other being, spirit guides thrive on love and attention. So if you perceive the benefits of this upgrade, and acknowledge it, then you may actually increase your awareness of this level of assistance that we all have, by the way. None of us are here alone, because alone is not possible. Then you will perceive it more. The more you acknowledge it, the more you'll perceive it. So with the spin, by the way, I did start the spin with a conscious intent, in which I spoke, but I have let go of the attachment to the outcome. I'm simply now the observer. You could say that the spin started from the conscious level of mind, right? But once I let go of my attachment to the outcome, then by default, the superconscious mind is now running the show. Okay? So consciously, I'm just the observer now, and the spin will continue until the job is done. Actually, this is one way of seeing, how deep an issue might be as to how long it takes to spin out, how long it takes to correct. But right now, consciously, I'm not in control. Now, someone watching you do this might say, well, you're just moving that. I can see your hand moving. What are you talking about? And I never really had a snappy answer to that, because in their perception, of course, that was their reality, until I realized, well, wait a minute, they're misidentifying who was doing this. So now when someone says, well, you're just doing that, I'll say, yes, I am, but it's not the me you think I am. It's the superconscious mind. So anyway, it's always good to have a snappy answer for those folks. Still releasing, still clearing. Okay, there we go. So now our spirit guides are showing up at 100% light, and we also have more, by the way. That's one of the side benefits of this upgrade, is that you tend to get more just by showing up and asking. The average number of spirit guides that we as a group here have shared up until now is 5, okay, which is pretty consistent with the human average, but our average now is 9, okay? So you get more guides when you become more consciously involved with their assistance. Now, the next thing we're going to do also involves the 4th dimension, where our spirit guides hang out. The 4th dimension, like the 3rd, like physicality, is a dimension of duality. In other words, the idea of opposites is supported in the 4th dimension as it is in the 3rd dimension. Now, we take opposites and duality for granted because it's all around us. Up and down, hot and cold, sad and happy, good and evil, all that stuff. That's all duality. Duality does not, how can I say, exist in every realm. There are realms or dimensions where duality simply is not supported. And to us, being in a non-dual state like that would be nirvana. It would be bliss, because we would have no opposition. You would love something, and there would be no contradiction within yourself or that thing to that love. It's all of those wonderful things that we aspire to without opposite. Okay. The 5th dimension, by the way, is the closest vibrational range that reflects non-duality. But in between the 5th and the 3rd dimension, our physical dimension, the 4th dimension is still dualistic. And some have called the 4th dimension the astral plane, or the mental plane, okay? And just like our brains, our mental processors are split right down the middle, so the 4th dimension is also split between entities or beings of light, like your spirit guides, like the angels, etc., by the bearers of good information, and also negative entities or thought forms. Now, again, I don't want to create the dualistic illusion that these things can in any way harm or affect us. Okay, there are no victims here, as the fourth dimension is part of the movie that we are all projecting. Okay, so nothing can really harm you here, and you're not the victim of anything other than your own thoughts. In the case of the negative aspects of the fourth dimension, many of these represent souls that are no longer in the body, but are confused. They're kind of stuck in the waiting room. The fourth dimension is like the waiting room where you first go when you transition from the body, and then usually after about 3 days you move forward into the higher realms. But some of these entities, because of, for whatever reason, lack of information, attachment, mental or emotional attachment to their 3D lives, or those remaining in 3D refusing to let them go, they get stuck. And so often these energies or entities in the fourth dimension are actually attempting to get back into the third dimension to complete whatever it is that they feel they're not complete in, whether it's, you know, in a loving relationship or an addiction for that matter. They're just they're still attached to their previous life and therefore are suffering. So as far as a group clearing goes, we're going to intend now and bring on board all our new guide teams, because these are the guys that operate in that realm and will do the work on our behalf. We now ask our spirit guides to scan our energy fields, our physical bodies, our homes and properties, our places of work, and let's extend this clearing, as we do very often in our clearing calls, out to all previous homes and properties in this life, all the way back to conception, and extend this clearing to other timelines, okay, other versions of you having an experience in another time frame. We used to call these past lives, but now we realize that in a quantum realm, it's all happening at once, so they're not that far away. Past lives are actually present lives, or parallel lives more accurately, that are going on simultaneously. So we extend this clearing out to all parallel lives where I'm having a human experience in a different time frame. And we release from ourselves in all of these areas now any and all lower astral entities, thought forms, including disincarnate souls, including earthbound spirits, including subhuman forms, or what we call critters, including crystallized astral energy along the spine. This is astral energy that somehow has blocked the movement of energy through the spine. So we ask that our spirit guides also dissolve any of that energy, clearing us of any energy darts, negative intentions sent our way, curses, spells. I see we have that in the list down there below as well. Releasing curses, spells, hexes, black magic, and bad medicine. These are also astral aspects. Clearing any psychic weapons or etheric projectiles held in our field from parallel life experiences. Clearing up any psychic armoring or defenses that we may have created in other circumstances which are now blocking our energy, especially around the heart. We want to release any astral armoring around the heart. And as all of these energies are dissolved and released, of course, we have to be responsible with energy, okay? Because energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be transformed. So we send the energy of all of these astral thought forms now to the most appropriate station for their ultimate purification and return to wholeness. Everything cycles back ultimately to wholeness. So we send it there. And we fill the voids within our fields, within our bodies, within our homes, with the most beneficial healing energies now of the fifth dimension, bringing in with it a tangible recognition of our divine safety, of our innocence, of our freedom, of our invulnerability. Okay, this is the truth of you. So let's, as we clear out the dust and the debris, as we clean the junk out of the closet, let's put something good in there. Let's put some fifth dimensional divine golden light to take the place of these energies. And that this clearing be, again, for the highest good of all and without reversal in all cases. Okay, so I'm getting that's complete. Now, one of the things you can do on a regular basis, if you don't have time to, to get into all the information in the charts, is just first thing in the morning, along with your cup of coffee or whatever, just raise your overall energy. Raise your overall life force to its optimal for this day. So you get up in the morning, it's not one of those jump up in the morning and good day sunshine feeling. It's kind of, but you got a day ahead of you, so there's things to do. Just raise your energy to match the optimal conditions of the day to give you the enthusiasm, to give you the life force that you need for the day. Just bring it up. Fill your tank, you might say, for the day with simply a right spin. Again, if this is something you do on a regular basis, there may come a time when you no longer need to do this because your spirit guides get it automatically. Okay, so that's a very simple right spin now because we're raising. The left spins are for taking things out, removing. The right spins are for bringing something in, or increasing or improving. Basically, that's the difference between the two. If you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. Okay. And as a matter of fact, very often when we're doing left spin releases, we'll drop in a right spin intention on top of that, which is fine as well. Again, it's primarily about intention, not about saying the right thing, etc. I mean, as far as that goes, the more you learn about yourself, the more you learn about the structures of the mind, and the more you learn about the principles of this practice, the more the language just comes naturally. But do your best, do what you can do from your current understanding, from your unique background and education, do what you can, say what you can, and trust that the rest is taken care of. Again, we can never account for every detail anyway, so something has to be taken care of. Another very common clearing, this comes from the protocol, is birth trauma. Birth trauma can be very formative and can set the course in many areas of our life if it's not ideal. Now, on a scale of 10, all physical births are traumatic to a degree. That's a given coming here. But on a scale of 10, the human average is 3, okay? 10 being the worst, of course. For us here tonight in this recording, we're at a 9. So, you know, you can pretty well assume that when you're doing a group birth trauma, it's going to fit in there somewhere because it's just so common in our time. And without going into too much more, you know, if there is a high degree of birth trauma, it can affect us emotionally, it can affect us physically, it can actually affect how present we are, how much we actually come into the body. So I'll mention those things as we do the dowsing now. But on behalf of the group here tonight, we now, with a left spin, go back to the time of birth for each and every one. Okay, here's an example of time travel. On a conscious level, that's not possible. But the superconscious is everywhere and everywhere. So it's not a big deal for the superconscious to go to that point of time, which actually only exists in the present moment in our unconscious memory. So we ask the superconscious to access the memory of the time of birth to each and every one of us and to reduce the degree of trauma experienced by each of us at whatever level it was to the absolute minimum for each and every one. Reducing the trauma for our mothers and thus for ourselves, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. And as the trauma index is changed, as the first chapter in the story of this life is now rewritten to support us, we ask for a complete reversal of all blockages and ill effects of any original trauma, including inviting 100% of the soul to come into the body now at the point of birth, including improving the emotional bonding between us and our mothers at that very crucial time of entry into this life. What else is there? Oh yeah, adjusting the timing of our birth so that our astrological alignment is actually 100% supportive of us as originally intended. And so we now ask to adjust with these corrections and release all of the ill effects and traumas associated with birth. We ask to adjust the timeline of this life from birth forward to no longer be reflective of any trauma in the former scenario, but to only be reflective of the positive changes of this release. Now, just to save time, while that continues to correct here, I'll just mention the next item, releasing curses, spells, hexes, black magic. This is actually more of a fine-tuning of fourth dimensional thought forms, okay? And we actually bundled that in with the fourth dimensional clearing I mentioned earlier. What's unique about these, I suppose, is that they are typically historically relevant. And that's why the different terms, curses, spells, hexes, etc. In other words, if something is a spell, it probably reflects a time in history when that was the common belief that you could actually cast spells or have a spell cast on you. But they're all different terms, basically, for negative thought forms that have been intentionally directed towards us, and very often involves time travel. Okay. But we included that. We bundled that into the fourth dimensional clearing. So still releasing the birth trauma. You can see that the spin is now just slowly, slowly, slowly coming down, and it is now complete. Okay? So I just want to ask the question now, is birth trauma corrected for each and every one on this recording tonight? Yes, it is. Okay. So let's look at the final one here, which is raising adaptation to Earth, solar, and galactic changes. Especially physical adaptation. This seems to be a real challenge right now. The physical dimension is simply, a dimension is simply a degree of density. Okay, everything in the universe is made of the same thing, which is thought manifesting as light. But that light resonates at different rates, and the slower the rate of resonance or vibration, the more the densification of that substance. And of course the physical realms are much more dense than the non-physical, and thus resist change. Okay, so in other words, we can do a dowsing to release an emotion, for example, or a mental factor, and results are instantaneous. But when you're dealing with physical factors, sometimes you have to wait a little while for the body to realize that the change has taken place and to adapt. Okay, so it's just because it's more dense. But what's going on energetically on the planet right now, and has been going on for quite some time, are tremendous changes in the light energy and thus the frequency and effect of the sun, particularly. The sunlight has changed. Our sun has actually shifted from a yellow to a white star. Okay, this is information that is validated scientifically through the work of Dieter Breuer's, who wrote recently Solar Revolution. Excellent book, by the way. Very encouraging as well. And in there, they talk about the increase in gamma radiation from the sun actually proven to be an activator of the dormant DNA. So big stuff going on the Earth right now. And energetically, we seem to adapt fairly quickly, but physically there can be challenges. And this is why we subscribe actually to a service that is just a free website thing, where they can tell you if there's been recent solar flare activity, like there has been for this last week, apparently. And often it's a good thing to know that that's what's going on, because sometimes I can explain the strange things that are going on within you. So anyway, currently right now, our current degree, and again I'm reading on a percentage chart here, our current degree of physical adaptation to Earth, solar, and galactic changes. And again, the sun is merely responding to its changing relationship with the galactic center. Its alignment with the galactic center is actually what's driving this change with the sun, which then extends out to the planets. But, okay, so what we're going to do with the right spin now, okay, because we're going to raise something up, is we're going to raise our individual physical adaptation to past, present, and future Earth, solar, and galactic changes, particularly in the area of radiation. And again, as we raise our adaptation to the optimal, maximal level for each and every one of us, we also allow for the changes and the positive mutations that are occurring at this time to occur with grace and ease for each and every one, raising our awareness at the same time so that we can acknowledge that these physical changes are actually reflective of a much bigger opportunity for change that is going on at this time. Let's also raise our mental and emotional adaptation to these changes at the same time to optimal levels, and that this degree of adaptation will be sustained now from this time forward without reversal, enabling us to move with much more grace and ease into these changes, which are unprecedented, by the way, in history, the history of this planet. We've never quite experienced this, and especially experienced it on such a global scale. There's been changes within certain populations and certain regions, etc., and displacements and all this, but never on this entirely global scale. So exciting times indeed, and quite a privilege to be here. So by raising our adaptation, again, we release ourselves of any negative symptoms, bodily symptoms, stress in the nervous system, stress in our sleep patterns, very often can be associated with this. Again, as we adapt to these changes, we adapt to the natural cycles of the earth, of our own bodies, and again of these cosmic influences. Okay, so quite a lot of work going on here. That right spin is really going. So to me, that's an indication that we're really sucking this one up. We really want this one. And again, it's kind of a blanket approach to many issues that people may be experiencing, even aches and pains for that matter. But we're clearing, as our DNA particularly responds to these energies and activates, we're also clearing memories. We're also clearing ancient memories of suffering and all the basic crap that's gone on this planet held in our DNA memory is being flung off in this new energies. So sometimes these old memories do show up as physical symptoms. And again, we just need to recognize that a symptom, whether physical or non-physical, is always an indication of change. It's always an indication of some healing process going on. So again, that's why we threw the phrase in with grace and ease, so that we can adapt to these changes and still remain within sane and comfortable levels as much as possible. That's still going on, as you can see. Okay, there we go. And just as a reminder there, again, we fill, when we do the clearing work with the left spin, which by the way is about 90% of the work you do in this practice is releases. Again, going back to the idea that we don't have to change who we are, we just need to clear away what's obscuring our memory and knowledge of that. So most of the work you'll find is with left spins, but there is a place for right spin as well. So starting to wrap up here. Get the webcam back. How do I learn more? How would you learn more about this technique? Well, if you're local, that is Colorado, we're actually having a class this weekend. Saturday, all day Saturday and Sunday, we're doing a level 1 class, and certainly you can fly into Denver Airport if you're from out of town. We'd love to have you here. The live classes are a lot of fun, a lot of interaction. We get you up and running, working with each other, getting really grounded in the practice so you can take it home and accomplish something with it. So that's coming up this weekend. We have another level 1 coming up in mid-December. We've moved the date back a little bit there in Southern California in the San Clemente area. So for you folks down there, we'd love to see you show up. All that information is on our website, along with we do individual sessions. Now, I recognize the names of some of you as actually our Dowsing clients in the past, and thank you for showing up. We also offer, as a session, you have the option, you can have the session to work on your own personal issues, or you can also use it as a tutorial, to help you get up and running, because this really is all about empowering folks, right? So, and just a word about the level 1 and 2 courses. We do have an arrangement now with an outside board to grant certification in mind field repatterning if you're the kind of person that likes a credential and likes to be backed up also with a professional board and association benefits. Don't forget that every second Monday we are still doing our free clearing calls, which is a conference call, a telephone conference call, and that information is also on the site with the phone numbers and everything. And of course, the book Dowsing Beyond Duality includes pretty much what we talked about tonight and much more, and actually is the official text of the course. So particularly if you're going in for certification, it's required reading. This book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, many other online booksellers, and actually in some physical bookstores as well. So I encourage you to read that book. It's going to answer a lot of your questions, and it guides you. It sort of takes your hand and puts you through specific exercises and helps you develop your skills as you read the material. Plus, there are over 70 charts in there that you can also use. So I'm going to just have a look now at the question panel here, and I'm going to go all the way back to the first question. And the first question is this being recorded? I'm really enjoying your presentation, but would like to hear it again. Well, yes, it is being recorded, actually right now, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about that. So send me a personal email with that request, and we'll see what we can do. And Deborah says, thank you so much. This is a great webinar. Thank you, Deborah. Deborah was on our call last night, too, as well. Helpful to see you and your wonderful personality, oh, shucks, as well as the PowerPoint makes a big difference. All right, well, thanks for that validation, and, of course, we will try and do that more with our webinars. This is actually a new service with GoToWebinar. They've just recently added in the video cam thing. Okay, so any more questions? Just go ahead and write them in if you will. Thank you, Joanne, for that. And if there's no questions, well, that's great. As a matter of fact, that's a sign of genius. When you have no more questions, that means you got it. And I don't see any more coming in, so that's great. If you do have further questions, by all means, contact us. The best way is through info@bluesunenergetics.net. That way, both Arena and I get the emails, and one of us will, get to you. And if you enjoyed this class, again, let us know, and because we've got room on these webinars for a lot more people. Let us know, and maybe we'll think about doing some specific focus classes on more specific topics. So that would be great as well. Okay. So I think with that, folks, we will say good evening. Thank you so much for showing up and being part of this group work. And by the way, when a group gets together like we have tonight with a common intention, a very powerful morphic field is built, which has effects beyond anything we can comprehend. Because we are here as a collective, there's only one of us here, okay? Any aspect of that one that puts a concentrated intention out actually positively benefits everyone. So thanks for your work, and many blessings. See you next time.